Isn't me all the movies that they're making now and creating now are all the same?
Sequel.
The movie industry is dying and no one's going to theaters anymore because y'all ain't giving us anything worth watching.
There is a huge issue right now that is taking over Hollywood. Have you recently gone to watch a brand new movie and thought to yourself, wait, haven't I seen this before? Like 5 times already? Same protagonist, same witty side character, same third act redemption arc. If that sounds familiar, then you are definitely not alone, because the truth is, every movie nowadays feels exactly the same. I mean, just look at the top grossing films from the past few years and you will see it clear as day. Marvel, Star Wars, and endless Disney remakes. These are cinematic comfort foods. Studios know they'll sell because we already love the characters, we know the worlds, and most importantly, we trust them. The problem is, the more we reward these familiar franchises, the less incentive there is to try something new. Why risk making something original when you can slap a popular character into a mediocre script and still make $1 billion? I don't want to see a 10th Mission Impossible, okay? I'm begging you, please give that man a rest. And this isn't an over-exaggeration, okay? These studios are so desperate for familiar IPs that they've even started turning toys, video games, board games into full-blown cinematic events. After the recent success of the Barbie movie, we now have countless toy movies in the works, including The Sims, Monopoly, and even, get this, okay, get this, an Uno movie. Yeah, Uno, the card game, they're turning that into a movie. I literally have no words. And this isn't just about the content either, it's about the formula. There is a rhythm in how these movies are made now, and it's like screenwriting has been turned into a blueprint. Introduce your hero within the first 5 minutes, insert comic relief at regular intervals, drop the emotional gut punch at the 70-minute mark, and always leave room for a sequel. It's efficient, it's clean, and it's slowly sucking the soul out of cinema. Even visually, everything looks the same. Lighting is flat, colors are desaturated, and everything is covered in this weird digital glaze that makes it look like you're watching a video game cutscene. Remember when movies used to look beautiful, when cinematography actually meant something? Now half the time, I can't even see what I'm looking at because the lighting is so dark for some reason. I'm not even joking, why are we filming scenes in the pitch black? What's even weirder is that some of these movies aren't bad. In fact, a lot of them are technically impressive and entertaining, but that is part of the problem. They're just good enough to pass, but not daring enough to be great. They don't challenge us, they don't surprise us, they just exist like background noise with a $200 million budget. And maybe that's what this video is about, the slow death in surprise storytelling. Because if every movie is following the same blueprint and every character is a copy and paste of the last one and every ending is predictable, then what are we even watching for? And trust me when I say, you will be shocked when you hear how AI and algorithms are taking over Hollywood, and not for the better. In today's video, we're gonna break down just why this is happening, why every movie feels like the last, why originality is being pushed out in favor of brand recognition, and why if we're not careful, we might lose the magic of movies entirely. Before we get into the video, if you're into deep dive video essays about film and TV, then you better hit subscribe because that is literally what we do here. We, as in me, because I'm the only one on this channel, but yeah. Now, there are a lot of factors that play a role in the decline of movies today, but let's just start off with the monster in the room, and that is IP, or intellectual property. Because once upon a time, studios would greenlight a movie based on a fresh script, a risky idea, or even a gut feeling. Now, they just want a guarantee. And in today's industry, a guarantee means one thing, something that people already know. That's why everything, and I mean everything, is based on pre-existing material. Comic books, video games, novels, board games, hell, even old theme park rides and toy lines. From the way things are going, I wouldn't be shocked if in a few years' time they release a Mr. Beast biopic. He actually scares me so much. Studios aren't just banking on stories, they're banking on brands. Recognizability equals safety, and safety equals money. When you compare the movie releases from 1994 to 2024, the difference is impossible to ignore. Let's firstly look at the top 10 highest grossing movies of 1994, and before I show you, I want you to guess how many of them are already existing IPs. If you said 2, then you are correct. Out of this list, the only existing IPs were The Flintstones, which was an adaptation of a cartoon, and Clear and Present Danger, which was a sequel. The rest were either original films or based on novels, and why I don't classify novels as original IPs is because I think there's still a lot of creativity and originality that can come from bringing a novel to life. I don't know if that makes sense to everyone, but it makes sense to me. In this top 10 list, you have The Lion King, Forrest Gump, True Lies, and many other fantastic stories. You see, in 1994, Hollywood was still in the golden era of creativity, experimenting with new genres, fresh ideas, and original stories. Audiences could walk into a theater and be completely taken by surprise with films that didn't rely on familiar characters or universes. And more importantly, it's clear to see that these original ideas were dominating the box office. Now, let's fast forward to 2024, and I'm gonna ask you the same question again, okay? So out of these movies, how many of them were already existing IPs? The answer is all of them. I'm not joking. You have Inside Out 2, Deadpool and Wolverine, Moana 2, Despicable Me 4. I mean, it's just insane. What actually makes me feel a little bit sick is that there is 2 movies in this list that are the 4th in the franchise. Can someone please tell me who was out there begging for a 4th Kung Fu Panda movie, okay? Please show yourself. Do you see the problem here? We are not crazy for thinking this, I promise. Hollywood's not even trying to hide it anymore. All they make is reboots, sequels, and whatever recognizable name they can turn into a movie. And look, this obsession didn't come out of nowhere. It exploded in the 2000s after the superhero boom. Once Marvel figured out how to turn their entire comic book catalog into a cinematic universe, complete with interconnected films, billion-dollar box office returns, and a cult of die-hard fans, every other studio wanted in. Suddenly, it wasn't just good enough to make a good movie. You had to make a franchise, a universe. Something you could stretch into 10 films, 4 spin-offs, 2 TV shows, and a line of Funko Pops. But here's the weird thing about all of this. Have you noticed that there hasn't been any big new major franchise in the last decade? If Hollywood makes the most money from long-running franchises, then why aren't they taking risks on fresh ideas and building the next big thing? Instead of creating original worlds, when they want new concepts, they turn to other mediums instead. Because the big studios aren't just looking at novels and comic books anymore, they're raiding our childhood bedrooms. We're talking Barbie, Minecraft, Super Mario Bros. Basically, if it existed in your childhood bedroom, then it's now a potential blockbuster. And to be fair, some of these movies actually work, like those adaptations were great movies. Maybe not Minecraft though, but it also proves the point that it's no longer about the story, it's about the recognition. If an audience sees a trailer and already knows the characters, the studio is halfway to a box office win before the movie even drops. It's just lazy. That's why original scripts have such a hard time getting made now. If you're a screenwriter with a fresh idea, Hollywood's first question isn't, is it good? It's, what is it based on? If the answer is nothing, then good luck getting past the first meeting. There is literally a movie in the works based on a Reddit post, and I know that sounds like a joke, but I promise you it is not. And of course, the lead role has to be played by Sydney Sweeney, because apparently she is the only actress in Hollywood right now. And honestly, this system is more than just annoying, it's deeply limiting, because when you only fund things that have already been proven, then you don't give audiences the chance to fall in love with something new. Some of the biggest classics in recent movie history, Inception, The Matrix, Pulp Fiction, weren't based on anything. They were risks, they were original, and they paid off, not because people already knew the story, but because the story was good. But that kind of creative gamble is just getting more and more rare. Studios are scared, budgets are sky high, marketing is expensive, and audiences are unpredictable, so they just play it safe. They reboot, they remake, they make a 4th Kung Fu Panda movie, and then they blame the audiences when the results feel stale. What's wild is that most original movies do actually make money. Just look at 1994. Most of the top grossing films that year were fresh ideas. So it's clearly not a guaranteed financial loss, which makes you wonder, why is Hollywood playing it so safe? We will answer that question in just a moment. Why do I keep saying we? I'm the only person here. And that obsession with safety bleeds into how stories are told. Because even when a movie isn't a part of a franchise, it might still be followed following the exact same formula as the one before it. It's not just the sequels and franchises that are repetitive, it's the structure of the movie themselves. It's the way they start, the way they progress, and the way they wrap up neatly with a cute little bow right before teasing a sequel at the very end. Whether it's a superhero film, a drama, a gritty action thriller, they all kind of feel the same. And that's not an accident, it's because Hollywood has quietly fallen in love with a formula. Not just any formula, the formula. The save the cat method, the 3-act structure, the hero's journey. If you've ever studied screenwriting, then you will know what these names are. But here's the thing, they were tools, guidelines, not laws. Yet somewhere along the way, Hollywood started treating them like the sacred commandments. And now, every big budget movie feels like it was made in the same factory using the same blueprint. So let's break this down. Act 1. Introduce your protagonist within the first 5 minutes. Show us what they want, sprinkle in a character flaw or two, nothing major, just enough to give them room to grow. Maybe they're a bit selfish, maybe they don't believe in themselves. Add a quirky best friend, a work-related setback, or a dead relative's life advice. Then boom, the inciting incident. The moment that throws our hero into something new. They resist it at first, but eventually accept the call. Act 2. Cue the training montage, the witty banter, the false victory. The hero makes progress, learns a lesson, gets cocky, maybe there's a party, maybe they face off against a mid-tier villain. Things are going okay. Until they're not. Enter the emotional crash. They lose the girl, the mentor dies, the villain wins. It's the all is lost moment. Cue the rain, the sad piano music, and the dramatic stare into nothing. They almost give up, but then comes the pep talk, the big revelation, the power within, and then you know what comes next. Act 3. The final battle, the big chase, the climactic kiss. Everything wraps up in a high-stakes set piece with a ton of CGI and an orchestral score blasting in the background. Then comes the resolution. The hero has grown, they've changed, they've saved the day. Maybe they get the promotion, maybe they forgive themselves, maybe they fly into the sunset. And then of course, tease the sequel. Sound familiar? It should, because once you notice it, you start seeing this skeleton underneath every studio film made in the last 10 years. And sure, there's nothing wrong with this structure, it can be helpful, but when the structure becomes the product, that's when creativity starts to die. This isn't just about lazy writing, this is about market-tested storytelling. Studios don't just greenlight films anymore, they test them. Algorithms, focus groups, data sets. They analyze what beats make audiences feel things, when to cue the emotional music, how long to wait before inserting a joke. It's like storytelling by spreadsheet. And the goal isn't to make you feel deeply, it's to keep you engaged just enough to keep you in your seat, finish the movie, and ideally buy a ticket to the next one. Take Marvel for example, arguably the best storytelling machine in history, and credit where credit's due, they built something exceptional. But after a while, even Marvel films started to blur together. Every movie had that mix of snarky dialogue, last-minute reveals, conveniently timed trauma backstories, and boss fights that escalated into CGI chaos. You know exactly when a joke is coming, you know exactly who's gonna survive, and even the biggest twists feel pre-approved. And then, let's talk about character tropes, because here's where formulaic storytelling gets really frustrating. The reluctant male hero with a tragic past, the strong female lead who has no flaws except that she's too independent, the comic relief sidekick, the villain who is evil but is also secretly sad. These archetypes used to be tools, but now they feel like character requirements. So you may be asking, why is this happening? Because the formula works. That's the sad truth. It delivers a sense of familiarity. It keeps pacing tight, it avoids risk, and in an industry that's terrified of losing money, formula is comfort food. It's not trying to create a masterpiece, it's trying to create something that you'll say, that was pretty good when you walk out of the theater and forget it in 2 weeks. But the cost is that it flattens everything. Emotion becomes predictable, dialogue starts sounding like AI wrote it. You end up with a movie that's technically amazing but emotionally empty. But what they didn't expect is that audiences are catching on, people are bored, and you can feel it. The box office is dipping, streaming fatigue is real, and more people are saying the quiet part out loud, that movies just don't hit like they used to anymore. But here's the part that really puts it in perspective. It wasn't always like this. If you look at movies before the 2000s, especially the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the structure wasn't so rigid. Yes, stories still had beginnings, middles, and ends, that's storytelling 101. But there was way more flexibility in how those stories unfolded. Not every protagonist had a perfectly calculated character arc, not every movie was building towards a franchise, and not every decision was made with a spreadsheet hovering over the script. And that's one big thing that I find really prominent about movies today, and that is that they don't allow protagonists to be bad or have like really bad character traits. It's almost like they don't allow different types of humans, they just have to all be sort of good in the end. Let me know if you also noticed that, I'm so curious. But take the movie Pulp Fiction. It didn't follow a traditional 3-act structure, it barely followed linear time. Or The Truman Show, which slowly peels back its premise in a way that feels intimate and unsettling. That's another thing I find really frustrating about movies today. It's like they don't allow us to think for ourselves. It's like they just spell everything out for us. They don't allow us to put the puzzle pieces together in our brains. They think we're stupid or something. And oh my gosh, I absolutely hate how fast-paced movies feel today. It's literally the Mr. Beast influence. Everything stems from him. Guys, I promise I'm not obsessed with Mr. Beast, okay? I just think he's the root of all evil. No, I'm joking, I'm joking. But look at blockbusters like Jurassic Park and Titanic, which took their time to build the mood, develop characters, to just breathe. There was moments of silence, of awkwardness, of unpredictability. Things you rarely see in today's high-stakes, fast-paced studio films. Even the comedies were different. They didn't rely on quippy one-liners every 5 minutes to hold your attention. Characters could be weird or sad or even unlikable at first. Movies weren't trying to appeal to everyone, they just told the story they wanted to tell. And ironically, that made them connect more deeply with audiences. Probably because we're all not perfect people and we relate to the characters in some sort of way. I connect more to Adam Sandler's characters in his movies than I do to Sydney Sweeney's characters in hers. The difference is that they are so much more relatable. Those films trusted their audience. That's what's missing now, not originality, but risk. Movies used to feel human. Now they just feel like products designed to avoid offending, boring, or surprising anyone too much. Which brings us to the real question: what's actually driving this change in filmmaking? Why does it feel like we're going backwards? Well, the answer to this is completely unexpected, but we will touch on that in the next section. Firstly, we need to talk about how this sameness isn't just behind the camera, it's in front of it too. Have you ever been halfway through a movie and you suddenly realized, wait, haven't I already seen this guy in like 3 other movies this year? Yeah, you're not imagining it. That deja vu you're feeling isn't just because of the recycled storylines or the copy-paste visuals, it's because Hollywood keeps recycling the same people too. Now, I have already made a video talking about this topic just a few weeks ago, so if you want to go watch me rant about it for about 30 minutes, then I highly suggest you go and watch it. But I would just briefly go over it again here because I have a lot more to say. There's a strange comfort in seeing a familiar face. It's like ordering your usual at a restaurant. It's not thrilling, but it's safe. And that's exactly what studios are banking on. They're obsessed with star power and they cling to it like it's a cheat code for success. The logic goes like this. If audiences like Timothée Chalamet in Dune, they'll show up for Wonka, a complete unknown, and every single moody, soft-spoken protagonist he's offered until the end of time. And it's not just Timothée Chalamet. Think about Zendaya, Florence Pugh, Pedro Pascal, Jenna Ortega, Jacob Elordi, the current Hollywood inner circle. These aren't just actors anymore, they're brands. Casting them isn't just about talent, it's about tapping into an already existing fan base. And none of this is the actor's fault, there is no denying that they're talented. But when you see the same faces over and over and over again, the illusion starts to break. The movie becomes less about the character and more about the celebrity. You don't see Mr. Fantastic, you see Pedro Pascal. You don't see Wednesday Addams, you see Jenna Ortega. The line between actors and roles becomes so thin it disappears and it makes stories feel so much smaller. Now, let's talk about genre recycling. Ever notice how certain actors seem to get typecast into the same roles again and again? Florence Pugh plays an emotionally intense woman dealing with trauma. Pedro Pascal is Hollywood's favorite reluctant father figure. Jacob Elordi is being passed around between angsty, toxic roles and Hollywood's official bad boyfriend. These actors are good at what they do, but the industry keeps putting them into the same roles until we as audiences are numb to it and Oh my goodness, I am so numb to it. And it's not like there's fewer people pursuing acting careers. If anything, there is more than ever. The problem is there is far fewer opportunities to actually break into the industry. Because now, if you want a leading role, you better have one of three things: a famous last name, a massive social media following, or a face that's already tested well in another box office hit. Studios don't want to spend millions on an unknown, they want a guarantee. But this trend in casting just makes stories feel smaller. When we see the same faces, we already know what to expect. The surprise is gone. But if we expanded the casting pool and actually took chances on fresh talent, actors with new energy and no baggage, the story would feel unpredictable again. And unpredictability is exactly what audiences are craving. Just look at the rare moments when a breakout star does happen, like Lily Gladstone in Killers of the Flower Moon, or Millie Alcock in House of the Dragon. Those performances hit harder because we're not expecting them. We didn't walk in with baggage or associations, we just watched the character and it felt real, fresh, and exciting. But that freshness is rare because it doesn't fit into Hollywood's playbook. So far we've covered the obvious stuff, the predictable stories, the same characters, the actors that feel like they're in absolutely everything, and yeah, it's frustrating, but those surface level choices are just a symptom of something much deeper. Because behind all of this, there's a bigger shift happening. Hollywood isn't just creatively stuck, it's becoming algorithmically designed. The very soul of filmmaking, how movies look, feel, and function, is now being shaped by data, not vision. And that's where things start to feel more robotic. It's not just about what Hollywood is making, but it's how they're making it. And judging by the way things are going, this is about to get a whole lot worse. If you've watched a Hollywood blockbuster in the past decade, then you've probably noticed something odd. The movies that dominate the global box office aren't always the most daring, original, or best films. Instead, they're often films designed to be as widely palatable as possible. Whether it's a giant action-packed spectacle or a family-friendly animation, today, Hollywood films are increasingly tailored to ensure their international success, especially in booming markets like China. And while this is great for making money, it's slowly eroding the art of cinema. When the global box office becomes the top priority, films start being made for the widest possible audience, which means sacrificing nuance, character depth, and local culture for something that appeals to the masses. It's literally the McDonald's of filmmaking. Make something that everyone can digest, but don't take risks and alienate one group. Let's step back and understand how we got here. For decades, Hollywood movies were primarily created with American audiences in mind. Filmmakers had a certain degree of creative freedom, and the stories could reflect the nuance of American culture. But all of that began to change around the 2000s when Hollywood discovered the huge potential in international box office markets, specifically in China. Suddenly, studios were looking beyond the American audience. They realized they could earn millions, even billions, by making films that played well across multiple continents. Enter the era of global filmmaking. Films like The Avengers were designed to be universally understood, avoiding anything that might offend or confuse a global audience. That often meant playing it safe, sticking to familiar formulas, and avoiding anything controversial. At first glance, this doesn't seem like a bad thing. After all, film is a universal art form, and spreading it around the world should be seen as a good thing, right? But when the focus shifts almost entirely to the global box office, the core of what makes cinema such a powerful art form starts to get lost in translation. In some cases, this even changes the content itself. Take Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, for example, which had parts cut out or changed in certain countries to avoid backlash. The fact that studios now edit their films for international approval just shows how much control the global market has over what we see on screen. Now, I know what you're thinking. Doesn't global success and huge box office means that these are films that people want to see? Well, not necessarily. The sheer scale of Hollywood's global reach has created an illusion that films that perform well at the box office are the only films people want to see. But the truth is, studios are funneling more and more money into a small number of big franchises that are designed to generate the highest possible return, leaving very little room for films that don't fit into that mold of a global blockbuster. Meanwhile, these smaller, more experimental films, ones that push boundaries and explore complex ideas, either aren't getting made or are just being put straight to streaming platforms. This obsession with global success has turned Hollywood into a kind of movie factory where original ideas get swapped out for safe formulas and anything risky gets watered down by data and marketing market research. Which brings me to my next huge point, and it's a topic that makes me so sad, and that is the death of the mid-budget movie. Once the backbone of Hollywood, the mid-budget movie used to sit between the indie gems and the blockbuster giants. These films didn't chase billion-dollar box office numbers or Oscar sweeps, and they didn't have to. They had heart, they had something to say, and they could still deliver big entertainment without the overwhelming weight of a multi-hundred-million-dollar budget. Yet today, this category of film seems to be slowly fading away, and I don't think it's ever coming back. At one point, the mid-budget film used to be a part of Hollywood's identity. These movies typically had budgets ranging from around $30 million to $80 million, striking a balance between the commercial power of big-budget productions and the creative freedom of indie films. Films like The Social Network, The Matrix, The Big Short, and Juno were the bread and butter of this golden age that delivered high-quality entertainment without having to rely on CGI or massive star power. They had stories, relatable characters, and the kind of fresh perspective that made you feel like you stumbled upon something original. Now, Hollywood's only focus is trying to make the most money possible, and yes, I am as annoyed as you are. I don't want a Fast and Furious 17, okay? Just leave it as it is. What happened to all the late night comedy movies, to the cheesy rom-coms? Well, in the ever-changing landscape of modern cinema, it's all about numbers. The whole model for making movies has drastically shifted, and it's a shift that leaves mid-budget movies in the dust. These days, studios don't believe that audiences will pay for something that's not tied to a major IP, so instead of backing standalone original films, they double down on billion-dollar franchises like Avengers, Avatar, or Fast and Furious. You can literally see how studios spend their money. They go all in on massive franchises. Just guess how much Robert Downey Jr. is getting paid to appear in the next Avengers film. $80 million. Yeah, you heard that correctly. $80 million isn't the budget of the film, that is how much Robert is getting paid. And when you think about the amount of stars that are set to appear in that film, I don't even want to think about what the final budget is going to be. So as you can see, these movies are super expensive to make, but they come with built-in audiences and global appeal. This also means a huge pressure to perform, which leaves little room for films that are just good stories. And on top of this, there is this obsession now with building cinematic universes. Movies like Superbad, Bridesmaids, Pretty Woman are self-contained stories. They didn't need sequels, spin-offs, or theme park rides. Today, studios want IPs that can do it all: movies, merch, TV shows, and more. That leaves little space for films that don't come with a built-in marketing plan. And it's not just a money issue, it's a cultural one. Audiences have gotten so used to massive spectacles that when something smaller comes along, it's hard to grab attention. This affects filmmakers too. Mid-budget films used to have a sweet spot where directors could take risks and tell original stories without needing to go huge. But now, studios hold a tighter grip on big-budget films, and smaller projects are harder to fund if they're not a guaranteed success. The decline of the mid-budget film isn't just bad for the industry, it's bad for audiences. These movies brought a wide range of stories and perspectives, often with a perfect blend of heart and accessibility. Without them, we lose a piece of what made cinema special in the 90s and early 2000s. So where do we go from here? Are we stuck between superhero films and micro budgets? Maybe, but I believe there is still hope for a comeback, and after watching this next section, maybe you will believe it too. Okay, let's not get too bleak. Yes, Hollywood feels like a machine, cranking out the same blockbuster formula again and again, but there's a silver lining to this. Beneath the corporate dominance and algorithm-driven storytelling, there's a thriving creative undercurrent. The indie scene is not only alive, but more exciting than ever. Independent filmmakers don't play by the same rules. They're making films for the love of storytelling, not to impress executives or to chase the global markets. These are passion projects, often weird, raw, and risky, everything mainstream Hollywood avoids. And that's exactly where some of the best, most original filmmaking is happening. Take Everything Everywhere All at Once, for example. In 2022, this wild, genre-bending indie film wasn't a part of any franchise and didn't try to please anyone. I mean, the movie was literally edited on Premiere Pro, the same software that YouTubers use to edit their videos. But despite everything, it felt personal, heartfelt, and completely unique. It defied the odds, earning around $150 million worldwide and sweeping the Oscars, including Best Picture. That success proves something huge, that audiences still crave originality. It wasn't crafted to fit a global formula. It was messy, emotional, and bold. It worked because it had vision, the kind of storytelling that reminds us there's still space for films that break the mold. And Everything Everywhere All at Once isn't alone. Some of today's biggest directors, Tarantino, Nolan, Spielberg, got their start in the indie scene. They were allowed to experiment, fail, and grow without having to justify every choice to a boardroom. The internet has also changed the game. Platforms like YouTube, Vimeo, and social media let indie creators reach audiences directly. No studio gatekeepers required. What they lack in budget, they make up for in creative freedom. Some of the boldest, most experimental films today are coming from small teams with big ideas. It's easy to think that Hollywood is the only thing that matters when it comes to film, especially when franchises dominate the box office, but that is not the whole story. Films like Minari and Parasite prove that audiences want diverse, culturally rich stories that don't water themselves down for mass appeal. Their honesty and authenticity resonated globally because they dared to be specific. So yes, the mainstream may be stuck in a loop, but indie filmmakers are pushing forward, telling bold stories and reminding us what cinema can be. So the real question is, will Hollywood catch up? Will they ever get to a point where they see the value in taking more risks, where they realize that sometimes less is more? Or will they continue down the path of trying to please the global box office and shying away from stories that don't fit that mold? We don't know, but here's what we do know. Audiences have power. We decide what gets attention. There's still a world with untapped potential, with innovative filmmakers who are ready to take us to new heights. It's up to us to support that. If we show up for the films that take risks, studios will eventually follow. This isn't about hating blockbusters or hating Hollywood. There is room for both spectacle and substance. But we need to protect the kind of storytelling that makes us feel real, because if we lose that, then we lose what makes movies so good in the first place. The future of film is still being written, and it's up to us to make sure that it's a story worth telling. But anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on all of this down below. I would love to talk with you, debate with you, argue with you. I'm just joking, be nice. And if you made it this far, comment the word watermelon down below so we can confuse everyone who has short attention spans. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for 10 years of good luck, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!